Welcome to Modern Musings, conversations with the maiden, mother, and crone, where we look at ourselves and our world through the lens of the 21st century. Hi, and welcome back. I'm your hostess, Cindy Murray, and I'm here today with, as usual, with my co-hosts, Amber Garvin and Kristen Hessler.
Hello.
Hey.
And today's topic is a little bit of a different one. We're kind of going off in a philosophical bent here. And kind of what I want to talk about is something that's hotly debated, but not a current event topic. So, but still hotly debated. So what I want to talk about is serendipity versus synchronicity. And if you don't know what those are, serendipity is like a happy accident, a coincidence, something that is fortuitous, but just kind of occurs out of the blue. We all like those, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and we've probably all had some of those. The other word, synchronicity, is it kind of alludes to fate or something that is predestined. And that's where a lot of people kind of argue about things. Is this predestined? Is this synchronicity? Or is it serendipity? And I think it would be fun to explore that topic a little bit and talk about maybe some things in our own lives what that we might think are either serendipitous or synchronicitous. So, Amber, before we started recording, Amber was talking about a movie called Serendipity, which I have not seen.
That came out in 2001.
2001. Yeah. Okay. And I have not seen it. If you have not seen it and you don't like spoilers, this is your spoiler alert, because we are going to spoil it. But you can put this aside and go watch the movie and then come back. And then maybe you can have an informed opinion as well. So you probably have an informed opinion anyway. I didn't want to insinuate that you don't. But, I kind of want to know if you've had a serendipitous or synchronicitous event happen to you. And Amber, would you kind of describe briefly the premise of the movie, and then we can kind of talk about whether we think that.
Before I get into the movie, I just wanted to, because we were talking about synchronicity and like simultaneous occurrences and stuff like that, and Carl Jung,
yes,
he spoke a lot about synchronicity.
The same guy that we talk about
and
shadow work.
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm a fan of Carl Jung.
I'm synchronicity.
Yeah, synchronicity. And so you know how you called serendipity a coincidence, like the definition?
Yes.
Carl Jung called synchronicity a meaningful coincidence.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So I guess in his mind, like they may have been related, or they're both coincidences, which is funny. Like you're talking about like the hot argument and stuff like that. Like in my mind, I'm thinking,
is it really just a coincidence? Yes.
Well, like in my mind, like they're kind of the same thing, but not really, but kind of. Does that make sense?
Yes, I do. It does. But for me, like I say, to me, serendipity is, I happen to be walking down the street and I look down and I see a $1 bill and I pick it up and I look around and there's no one there. That is serendipity.
Are you sure you didn't see the movie?
No.
No, this time period, my parents did not watch Blockbuster.
Oh,
movies
okay.
So
well, you're talking about like the $1 bill and everything like that. That
only
has
because
a lot
that was
to do
an
with
easy.
the movie.
That's an easy thing that comes up. I see. It's something that happens to people.
Yeah. True.
And it is. It's a happy accident. Now, synchronicity to me it implies synchronous. It implies that there are things going on that we can't see. So things in the background, that the wheels of
different events occurring
at the same time, and it is inevitable that those things will happen.
That's when you afterwards you go, oh, it was meant to be.
It was meant to be. And that is the difference between synchronicity and serendipity. Okay. Now, some people think, it is still a happy coincidence.
Yeah.
Or a happy occurrence, but maybe not so. Some people debate also the other end of that, that it's predestination. It is not necessarily.
I get what you're saying now.
Yes. So there's really 3 levels there. There is the totally accidental occurrence.
Mm-hmm.
There is the wheels are turning and things happen. But then there is the grand design idea as well. Okay.
So that kind of puts the movie in a whole new light for me.
Okay.
So you want me to talk about the movie?
Yes.
So the movie is starring Kate Beckinsale and John Cusack, my man. I'm just kidding. I love John Cusack. He was definitely like 80s heartthrob in a nerdy way and 90s heartthrob in a nerdy way. He's like kind of like that guy next door, so to speak. You know, he's just like that average guy that, you know, women seem to find irresistible in movies, I guess. So the movie came out in 2001 called Serendipity, which, like the way you described synchronicity, the movie should have been called Synchronicity.
Well, and that's what I say. There's people
like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted you to talk about the movie, and we can talk about that as well. So
yeah. So like I kind of like the idea you're talking about predestination and stuff like that. So the movie is about 2 people, and they were both shopping for the same thing, or Christmas shopping, I believe. And they're in this big department store, and they both reach for the same pair of gloves at the same time. And then they kind of have a tug of war over the gloves because it was the last pair. And he eventually lets her have the gloves. And then they just kind of start talking or flirting or whatever. And so then they spend this really great evening together. And she's very superstitious. So she says, well, if we're meant to be in a relationship, and she takes a book out of her bag and she says, I'm going to take this book. I'm going to put my phone number in this book and take it to the next used bookstore. I'm going to take it to the used bookstore tomorrow. And if you go into a used bookstore and find this book, then we're meant to be. And then she says to him, you take a $5 bill and put your phone number on the $5 bill and then go get change. And if I run across this $5 bill with your name and number on it, we're meant to be. Because I don't believe like they exchanged names.
Oh.
It was very like mysterious. They spent this time together and they didn't exchange names or numbers or anything like that. And so she was very superstitious, and she was like, if you find my book with my name, then we're meant to be. And then, of course, you know, they never see each other ever again. Fast forward some odd years, and they're both engaged to other people, and they're about to get married, and especially John Cusack, he's like literally about to get married, and she had just gotten engaged to her boyfriend. And so they're sitting there, and they're both thinking about each other. And I guess they had been thinking about each other for years. And she had completely moved out of the city to a completely different part of the country. And she just gets engaged to this guy, and she goes, you know, I've been really thinking about this other guy. So she takes a spontaneous trip, and her best friend comes with her back to New York City to see if she can find him. So on the flip side, John Cusack is, you know, at his rehearsal dinner or whatever. He's about to get married, and he starts thinking about her. So he starts going to these used bookstores, trying to find the book. And then he's like, wait, I'll go back to the department store and be a detective and see if I can find her signature, if they have records of it. So they're both going on this wild goose chase to find each other, but then they don't.
Okay.
And then they kind of start resigning to, well, maybe I am meant to be with this new person and not the old, not this random person I met in a department store several years earlier. And then all of a sudden things start falling into place. Like she starts to head back to wherever she was living, and it just so happened that her best friend had the $5 bill. And she grabs it from her, and she's like, oh my gosh, that's his number. So, meanwhile, John Cusack's character was at his wedding rehearsal, and his future wife comes up to him with a book, and she says, well, I notice you are always looking at this book at every bookstore we go to, but you don't actually own a copy, so this is your wedding present from me. And, he had just been through all of this mess trying to look for the book and everything like that. And he opens the book, and it has her name and number in the book. So is that synchronicity or serendipity?
I would say that is not serendipity, because they are seemingly related, and that the actual definition, while you were talking about that, I looked it up, and the actual definition of synchronicity is the simultaneous occurrence of events which appear significantly related, as in them both finding the phone numbers, but have no discernible causal connection. So they appear to be connected, but you can't find anything that actually makes them connected. You can't point to one thing that, like, a certain person planted the phone numbers where they would both find them. That would not be a synchronicity. If someone knew about their secret, found the two phone numbers,
and made it happen,
that would not be a synchronicity. This happened by circumstance, possibly, but they seem to be related with no causal explanation.
So they were meant to be. They were meant to meet, and they were meant to be back in each other's lives.
That was their theory on that, and that is the theory of the way some people look at synchronicity. Is synchronicity because you cannot find that causal connection. Is it really a coincidence, or is it predestination? Is this something that has
faded?
Is this something that they manifested because they kept thinking about it for so long, or whatever? And so there, like I said, there's the multiple layers of the synchronicity, in that some people think it is just a coincidence that seems to be related, but some people think that it really is planned somehow, some master plan, so that they were fated to be together or whatever. So obviously they thought they were fated to be together. The title of the movie is incorrect. It's incorrect.
It's not a happy coincidence.
It is not a coincidence.
It's happy, but it's not really a coincidence.
He was looking for the book, so he caused that to happen.
Yeah,
in a
he
way.
manifested it.
He manifested
he did
it.
because his girlfriend was like, "Wow, I see you looking for this book all the
now,
time."
Now, if he had never looked for the book, and she had just given him the book, that might have been a serendipity. Oh, this is the book. If she had run across the $5 bill just out of purely whatever. That would have been serendipity. But by them both having it, that makes it
at the same time too. And I think that's the thing with synchronicity is that it's almost like the timing also is, like we say,
timing
is
the key.
It's in sync with something, or it's in alignment. So,
the word sync comes from synchronicity.
Well, you hear the phrase "the stars are aligned." Like they're, I don't know. This might be controversial, but I do believe that there is some kind of greater design, whether you want to call it God or you want to call it fate, synchronicity, whatever. Like at certain points in your life, the stars align and you are meant to be in a place at that time to witness an event or meet somebody or help somebody.
Right.
I totally believe in that.
Well, that actually brings an interesting point, too, because some people will say, like, seeing the numbers on, like, the alarm clock, if you look at it and it says 11:11, that's like...
That's a very synchronous thing.
Right. So, some people believe that is your intuition trying to tell you to, like, pay attention to what's around you. There's a sign. Like, it's a sign.
Yeah.
Or maybe if you are into like spirit guides and stuff like that, that it's your spirit guide trying to tell you to pay attention, or trying to tell you that you're in alignment. Or
it's all connected. Like it's all connected. Everything is connected.
But there are people who think that it's all just a coincidence, and so that's where that without seeming causal connections, you know, they feel that both are just a coincidence, and that's that is
and I
part
can
of the
see
big
where
debate.
Someone would say, when you look at the alarm clock and it just happens to say, you know, 11:11, that's just a nice coincidence. Oh, it's because you look at the clock all the time, but
and do you and here's the other
really
part
like,
of that.
Do you believe?
Do you consciously look at the clock frequently, hoping to catch it? Because then that would not be serendipity and probably not synchronicity either. You're actually causing that to happen. So
that's causality, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, there are certain things that, you know, it's a fine line with a lot of them.
So I had serendipity was actually a quote-unquote vocabulary word in one of my painting classes in college. And it was actually kind of funny because that movie had come out like maybe a year or two before. And I remember my painting professor talking about serendipity. We didn't talk about synchronicity, though, because I hadn't actually like heard those words like side by side. But he said serendipity is a beautiful mistake. And the reason why he was saying that was because of, you know, just sometimes when you're working on a piece of art, things happen.
I know where you're going with that. Yes.
When you look at them, you're like, oh, wow, you know, I'm going to accept that this just happened because it works.
Right.
And
we talk about that in crafting a lot.
I think of serendipity as accepting things for what they are and seeing the beauty in things. So, like, just because he told me in that way, that's how I see serendipity, is accepting things the way they are and seeing the beauty in them and being open to that beauty in things.
Right. Well, and we have a saying in crafting, you know, that a mistake is actually an opportunity for embellishment.
Yeah.
It's a happy accident. It's something that you turn an accident into something even better than it was. And that does happen. You know, you drip on your painting or you splatter or something, and then it lands in the perfect place to make a little flower. Or
you're drawing or you're painting someone's face, and you've already finished the face, and now you're just filling in the blue sky, and a little bit of blue drips down on her face, and it looks like a tear.
Right.
You go, oh, wow, that's
a
really cool. I'm going to let it dry like that. Too.
Yes. That's a serendipity.
Because
definitely.
It's beautiful. You see it, and you go, I'm going to keep this. I'm going to accept it for what it is.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. And sometimes you wind up loving those happy accidents even more.
Well,
yes.
How many times have directors said like the most iconic pieces of movies were accidents?
Right. Where somebody flubbed their line.
Weren't we talking about that in the Star Wars? The whole part where they're in the trash compactor?
Oh, yes. That was that was not planned at all.
Right.
And I
That's
think
my favorite scene. See,
those are the best parts of like the movies where you're just, and then like now I kind of think about it when I watch a movie. I'm like, was that planned or was it? Did it just happen? Right.
And there's and that brings, with the synchronicity, there's a whole series of books called When God Winks, I think is what it's called.
Mm-hmm.
And it's these people telling their own stories of synchronous events, that just happened out of the blue. Somebody's down on his luck. He's, Eckhart Tolle actually talks about one in A New Earth, where he talks about he gave up everything. He moved to California. He was, couch surfing with friends. He was down to his last dollar. And I don't remember exactly where he got published or he came up with the idea.
That's where he came up with
That's where he came up with the idea for his first book. And
the same thing happened with J.K. Rowling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
She was like about to be in a box on the street.
Yeah, she was going to be evicted from her home. And and then something happens, and it's like, is that, it's not serendipity, obviously, because there's connections there. Or seems to be connections there. So,
and I think that's where that word meaningful comes in, because the value of the coincidence goes up when So here's a really good example. Whenever you sent me off to college my first semester, you left me with like $40. Of course, this was like more than 20 years ago.
This was a long time ago.
That was a lot of money. And I used to have like a pretty big wallet, and I was like, I'm not really like, I don't need to write checks. This was back when we had checkbooks and stuff. And I was like, I don't really need this big wallet. I don't even have any money, really. So I was I had no more money left.
Yeah.
Everything was gone. And I was just like, I'm going to downsize wallets. So I was, I emptied out my wallet of like my ID and everything. And I went up into my little closet in our dorm room. And I went to get in my purse box to swap out. And this $20 bill just like fell on my face. It was just laying on the, top of the closet shelf, and it fell on me. It wasn't like, I'm not the type of person that has money laying around ever. Right. I always, I'm like Scrooge McDuck. I know where all my coins are,
Right.
And so it just like that $20 bill just rained on me, and I was like, wow. I was actually like, I don't need to carry a wallet because I'm broke. To now I have $20.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think of that as like, that was fate, because that $20, several days before would have been worthless to me, because it was like, woo, $20. I would have spent it on something, just, being irresponsible. But having it come to me at one of my low lows, you know.
That happens to me a lot. Like, that has happened to me a lot in my life. Like, I'll be at work or somewhere, and I'm pretty sure I don't have any money, and I'm starving, or I'm thirsty and need a bottle of water, and I'll look in my backpack, and then there's 4 quarters in the bottom of my backpack that I forgot they were there.
And I will tell you, I've had big synchronicities happen in my life as well. And I will tell you about probably one of the biggest ones. When I was younger, when Kristen was a baby, I was previously married, and I was kind of on the verge of getting divorced, but I was an aspiring writer. I was working on my first manuscript, which was trash, by the way. But
I would love to read that.
Oh God, it's trash.
Seriously,
I do still have it, but it's trash. Nobody gets to read it till I die. That way, I don't have to live through their judgment.
But that's how I feel about mine also.
Long story short, well, maybe I'll revisit it someday. But long story short, I was looking for some lyrics to use in it, as authors often do, put like a little snippet of song lyrics or whatever, and I wanted some song lyrics for a rock and roll type song. And so I had contacted the local recording studio and talked to a gentleman by the name of Don Caldwell there, and he had owned that studio for years. He's very well known in the Lubbock area, has recorded countless artists for eons. Very much an icon of the Lubbock area. And he said, well, I don't really do rock and roll, because he's a jazz performer, blues, jazz kind of stuff. But he said, but I have an engineer here that is, let me put you in contact with him. And I was like, okay. So, he puts me in contact with this guy, and, I actually meet him for lunch at the Kettle. I don't know if y'all remember the Kettle restaurant.
I remember the Kettle
all day, and kind of like an IHOP sort of thing. And we met for coffee, and, I met him and his best friend, and we talked about song lyrics, and I just kind of went, that's not really what I'm looking for. And I, mentioned I had to meet my husband or go pick him up from work or something, I don't know, and left. Never talked to him again. And in the meantime, this person is like thinking, she's really hot. She's kind of cute. But then I mentioned my husband. And I don't even think I was wearing a wedding ring at the time, because like I said, we were kind of probably separated or close to it anyway. Mm-hmm. And then he was like, oh, okay, well, never mind, So we go our separate ways. And, 3 or 4 years later, I'm divorced now. I decide I want to go to college and pursue something that I had wanted to pursue when I was in high school, and due to fate, circumstance, whatever, getting married, having children, I never got to do. And I decided, by golly, I'm going to go back to school and get my degree in sound technology. And so I had been enamored with this program out at South Plains College in Levelland, where I could learn to be a recording engineer and work in the music industry, which was something that was fascinating to me. And so I went out there and started taking classes, and one of my first classes, the actual instructor for that class was none other than Don Caldwell, the studio owner that I had met many years before. And
small world.
Yes, it's a small world. Yeah. Lubbock is a small town too. I mean, they think they're a big city, but it's still a pretty small town. It's pretty, especially if you're in one industry, you're gonna know pretty much everyone in that industry there. And so, but he was teaching the class there, and I'm tootling along. Well, somehow he was not able to continue teaching that class, and lo and behold, who shows up to take over the class for him but Mr. Mark Murray, the gentleman I had met at the Kettle restaurant years before, looking for rock and roll song lyrics. We hit it off over the course he was my instructor. But we were kind of fascinated by each other, remembered that we had met previously. And, when the semester was over and he was no longer my teacher, he actually asked me out on a date, and we began dating and eventually married. Now, tell me, was that serendipity, synchronicity, or fate?
Well, I believe that, especially like the synchronicity part, kind of
definitely synchronicity
goes hand in hand, really. And
because
I had never heard that whole story. Thank you for that. Like I knew that he was your teacher, and like off and on Kristen had told me like different things over the years, but like I didn't realize that, I'd never heard that whole story. So that was
right.
Really pretty.
I mean, that was our connection, was the music business, and and we had met that way, and it's really odd. And there are other weird connections between us. His family is from a town called Spur and Girard, 2 small towns east of Lubbock. My grandmother was from a town called Dickens and also Spur. Their families were in that same area, but had spread out and gone different directions. His mother's adopted mother was named Opal. My grandmother was named Opal. His sister was named Patricia. My sister was named Patsy.
And your birthday's 16, he's 17, and I'm 18.
Yes. And we got married on the 19th of June.
And your
But not because we... Yeah, and my son was born on the 20th.
Wow,
which
that
numerology,
totally. Like that
and
blows
none
my
of those
mind right
things,
there.
none of those things were planned or orchestrated by us. In fact, we were trying to get my son to be born on the 17th so that he would be the fourth generation. My husband has a father, an uncle, or a grandfather, an uncle, and himself that were all born on St. Patrick's Day, and we were trying to have a St. Patrick's Day baby, and but he was born on the 20th, and then the reason for our wedding date was merely a coincidence because my best friend and matron of honor was out of town for the entire month of June, and we wanted to get married in June, and that was the only date she would be in town.
Which was a Sunday, which happened to be Father's Day.
Yes, and he became a father to my daughter on Father's Day.
Yeah.
Aww. And so it's at the very least synchronicity, but sometimes I feel like it was fate because there are too many coincidences there for it to be simply a synchronous event.
Right. Well, and I also think about, like, had you not had me, you might have been in a different place in your life.
Right. I totally would have.
Looking for music lyrics for your memoirs or
right.
whatever.
I would have already been through college and would have been writing my own song lyrics or whatever at that point.
Yeah. But you had to have me first and be married first so that
we could ripen up.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Or be ready. Well, and there's other weird coincidences. I mean, there's so many weird things that link us together in very, very strange ways. So, people that connections among us. I think I've talked about doing my genealogy research and stumbling across a distant relative of mine who, a third cousin 5 times removed or whatever, who actually happened to be the father of Mark's best friend in high school. What are the odds of that? Definitely that would be a synchronous event. And I was just thinking one a minute ago, and it'll come back to me in a minute, but I was thinking of another one that occurred with us that it's so very, very strange that we have these things in common. And that's one of the reasons I like talking about synchronicity and fate, because I'm pretty much a believer in fate. I don't think that everything is predestined. Because obviously we have free choice.
Right.
We have our own will.
You have to believe that you have free will.
You have to have free will.
There's no sense in existing. You
right.
would lose all will to
And I
survive.
don't believe that God is some kind of peeping Tom that makes you do certain things. Or a puppeteer, yes.
It's not necessarily predestined. We do have free will, but we all are on different paths throughout our life.
Yes.
It's kind of like with reading the tarot cards. When you read somebody's tarot cards, they are on that path, which that path could change the next day. It could change the next second. But we are all on these paths.
Right.
And
you can choose to be on another path. Yeah.
Yeah, you could choose to be on another path. And then you always cross paths with people throughout your life.
Right.
Like for different synchronous reasons.
Right.
Or serendipitous reasons.
Right.
You and then sometimes you can like meet somebody like you did, and then years later meet them again and have a connection.
Oh, here's one that's funny. You know, Mom one time was inviting people over to scrapbook, and she accidentally invited someone that was part of another group.
No, it was a part. You're talking about. No, that was. She was actually. We were having a Memorial Day party.
Oh, okay.
That's what it was.
That's what it was. But it was like, wow, we had like, she invited someone over that it wasn't.
It was like I typoed the name and it auto-filled.
That she would have normally invited, but it was like they were in her address book from some other group of people. And that person is like one of our best friends, like friend of the family. And really close with that person now. And like had, you know, that to me is serendipity.
That is probably serendipity.
Yeah.
Because there aren't any synchronous events, other things that are going on that could have made that happen or whatever.
Kristen, how did you and I meet? Our dorm rooms were right next to each other in college. Like if I had been down the hall or around the corner, would we even be friends? I mean, we might be friends, but we
wouldn't have classes together intentionally, or we weren't studying the same thing.
We didn't have any classes together until you and I like got together later on, and we're like, hey, let's take water aerobics together or whatever. You know what I mean? Like we were just like on these two different paths, and we ended up in the same dorm room, and we were right next to each other. And I just happened to be listening to Good Charlotte on my computer.
And I poked my head in and was talking.
Yeah.
So actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was actually reading an article about, of all places, I was really surprised at the source of the article. It's from Forbes. And it said 5 surprising ways to make your own serendipity. And I thought, well, like, if you're making those things happen, it's really not. But I think what they're trying to say in a less metaphysical way is being open to possibilities and listening to your intuition. I think those are two
That's
really
a big
key
part of
factors.
it. Yes.
Because if you don't listen to those, like I said, beautiful mistake is accepting like what happens and seeing the good things in it. Because sometimes crap happens in your life and you don't realize until, you know, like hindsight
many years later
that was actually like a pivotal moment in your life that had something else beautiful happen. Like, you know, a child being born that you weren't planning,
or meeting Mark for coffee and then, you know, saying, well, that wasn't really what I needed, but it was nice to meet you. Bye.
So, the first thing that they say is talk to strangers.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know, that's a really good point. The people around you in your everyday life, those are your regular old, like your inner circle, right?
Yeah.
You're not really going to have like those serendipity moments with those people because you're always with them, right?
Right.
But when you talk to strangers, engage with people, how many times can you say like, oh man, you know, this company came together because these two people were at a party and they were like talking about a dream that they had, and you know, now we have, this fantastic, awesome company or this charity now that supports people, or, those kind of things, like a movie now that, you got a director and an actor talking about, and that's how those things happen. You have those opportunities that come to you when you talk to other people and you're speaking into the universe,
right?
Your dreams, right? Like when we talk about how modern musings happen, it was just us talking about, like, wouldn't it be so cool if we blah 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 blah?
Well,
and and she was talking about it one day, and Kristen was talking about it one day, and I was like, oh, you and Amber want to do this? I've always wanted to do blah blah blah. But if she hadn't opened up and said something about it,
yeah,
right.
And so, speaking out and telling people about your dreams and your aspirations. This one was funny because I liked the way that they worded it. Send serendipity flares. Like, what do you think that is?
Wow.
Manifesting. That's their way of saying manifesting.
Oh, okay.
So they're saying sending those out into the universe, sending that vibe. A flare is a signal, a flare.
Right.
Signal. So you're sending out to the universe. So I thought that was really funny that Forbes was telling people to manifest and build your own event. So, like large events and stuff, like having the party.
Right.
That brings people together.
Right,
so
right.
If you don't go anywhere and you don't talk to people and you don't do anything, you are not going to have synchronicity or serendipity in your life.
You have to be a little more extroverted, a little open, a little more just out there. Yeah. I mean, not out there, but being willing to put yourself out there, I guess is what I'm saying, because when you put yourself out there and you are open to those possibilities, that's when things come to you.
Yeah. One of the other ones was ask inspiring questions.
Oh.
So, instead of, like, how's the weather? Stuff like that, when you're having conversations with people, the small talk, get deep.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like that. I do. I like that a lot.
Like I said, I was interested. I was like, wow, from Forbes.
Wow. Yeah.
Telling people to manifest.
You see, we were talking about that earlier today, and we went to a little psychic fair kind of thing that was going on, and we were talking about manifesting and how we were talking about manifesting. Well, actually, we were talking about an older generation of people that were there, and how they were talking about manifesting before anybody was using that term, manifesting, and how we too had embraced a lot of that, but didn't really know. We didn't have that label for it. But in a way, manifesting could be called synchronicity too. And like, if you go back and watch The Secret, the guy who did Chicken Soup for the Soul talks about pinning a dollar bill and changing the zeros and pinning it over his bed, and and weird coincidences kept happening for him that should not, they felt orchestrated, and that was his synchronicity, but his theory and the theory of that book is that those things were manifested because you were open to the possibility of bringing those things in. Then you actually manifest it. It's not that it just happened, but you have to be open to the serendipity.
So it's almost like you have to be willing to accept the serendipity, and then the synchronicity will follow.
Yes,
possibly
definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a big topic. I think I could talk about it forever. And like I
definitely.
said, there's a lot more events that have happened with me and Mark, and other events that have happened in my life that are oddly coincidental. And so, I I could go on and on and on about them, but I don't think we have to. I think you get the point. So, but I'm curious to know if any of our listeners have had any serendipitous or synchronicitous or fateful, predestined events happen in their life. And, I'd love it if you could share those with us, either over on our MMC chat, which is our Facebook group that you can get to from our Facebook page, or go over to the blog, which is located at modernmusings.net. And you can comment on one of the blogs there or something. We'll have blogs about synchronicity and serendipity this week, and I had one on Monday, and Amber will have one on Thursday, and Kristen will have one on Saturday. And so you can read those and see what, kind of share your thoughts on those as well. So for next week, Amber is our hostess, and we are talking about
the ups and downs of social media.
Ooh, I have some.
And, maybe like some psychological effects behind social media addiction.
Okay. I'm ready to jump into that topic because I have a lot of thoughts on that one. So yeah. I'm looking forward to that. So for this week, that is pretty much it. And I want to say happy anniversary to my husband because...
Oh, how funny.
Not today, but it's on Monday. And
what a coincidence.
Yeah. Was that serendipity? Or I did not plan that.
That is so weird.
It is weird.
Wow.
So, but anyway, we want to thank Red Door Studios and Creative Audio Tech for the equipment that we rent to do this with, and for the consulting and our wonderful music. If you haven't listened all the way through at the end, the wonderful music that they made for us, or he made for us, and all that. And please, please, please give us some likes, shares, thumbs up, rate us, whatever you can to help us spread the word and get those ratings so that other people can find us as well.
And we want to say Happy Father's Day.
And we will be back next week with a new topic.
Goodbye.
Bye.